I think we're good. Good over here. We're good over there. Yeah. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. We are at a beautiful solar Shabbaton, which is why I am dressed the way I am. And whenever I'm without a tie, I dedicate my learning to my son Abba and Chana and family. Today's 3 Prakim Rambam is Hilchoi Sha'ar Oves Hatumos Prakim Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and Yud Dalid. We are beginning with Perek Yud Beis. The Rambam is going to write in the 12th chapter of Sha'ar Oves Hatumos the Achas Osir Mailos, the 11 stringencies in which Kodesh is more chamor than even Truma. And at the end, we're going to go through all of the 11. And at the end of the chapter, the Rambam is going to point out that there is a difference between the first 6 and the latter 5. Without any further ado, let's dive right in. Perek Shneim Asr. The 12th chapter has 16 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam. Achas esrei mailus asur chachamim lakodesh ala truma. The chachamim established 11 stringencies in which kodesh is more chamor than truma. The Elohein, number 1, yesh lo adam lahatbil kelim utrech kelim la truma. A person is allowed to tovel one utensil inside a much larger utensil. Obviously, in a way that the water also goes inside of it, inside the outer one, which means the water will have contact with the inner keli that is effective even for truma aboloi la kodesh. And why is that? Gezeda shema yiyeh pi hakeli tzad. It could be that the outer utensils opening mouth and the top will be very narrow. How narrow? It won't even be wide enough, as was the classic mouthpiece of a drinking pouch. And as we know, this is the that we apply today in a mikvah when we make the boit hashaka, without getting into it right now. But if you go into a mikvah, you're going to see that on the sides, if there's a boit al atzad, if there is a hole that's large enough for you to be able to stick in not 1 finger, but 2 fingers and be able to turn them, only that opening or larger means that these 2 waters are connected. And since now, how many kelim have a mouth that's so little in which you can put in a keli, but it's not not that many. It's very rare, but still there's such a possibility. And if that were to happen, and because there isn't a halachic connection between the waters inside the keli and the mikvah. Now, of course, if that is the case, even the truma, it's not good. Nor was then, if it's larger, then it is good. Elamai, the chachamim for kodesh made a chumrah never to use it. When did they even make the stringency for kodesh? Only if the outer utensil is pure. You are only using it as a medium not to lose. Let's say there is a needle, something very little you don't want to lose when you take it into the mikvah. That would be just a practical reason why you would put that smaller keli in a outer larger keli. If the outer keli is tahar, that means it doesn't need tefillah for itself. That is where la kodesh the chachamim made this chumrah. But if the outer keli is tamei, then even la kodesh it is okay, because we say also like tefillah, since the mikvah, the tefillah will be effective for the outer one automatically. Also tefillah lekelim shabatoichai afilu lishtamish behen bakodesh. Simple, easy. That is stringency number 1. Halacha beis moves on to stringency number 2. As we learned a lot about the rabbinic power of liquids, both acquiring tumah, always taking it back to a rishon, and then imparting tumah by touching even only the outer part of a keli. So we said loy nitma toichai, right? That was Perek Zayin halacha gimel. And as we left a little video addendum to Perek Zayin, when we learned it inside, we got stuck with halacha gimel, with halacha vav, and we clarified that it wasn't even such a big yigiyah, that when the Rambam writes in halacha vav that only la kodesh is there a tuma both for the inside and the outside? That was for oichlin. For mashkin, we stand, as we explained, if mashkin touches the outer part of the keli, the inner part remains starred. The outer part remains tamei to be metama liquids. It will be metama liquids. So we already learned about that. Another din, what is considered the inner part of the keli? So only the outer is tummy to be metama mashkin. The inner part of the keli remains putard. Now, guys, when you grab a utensil today, so I have this utensil, you put your hand around it. When you have larger utensils, normally you need a handle. Sometimes, at least in the times of Chazal, they made larger kelim without handles, but somewhere in the rim was thick. The walls of the keli were thick. They had an area where you would insert your fingers and you would be able to lift the keli. So that area is not the outside. And b'hamashkin shebetoich, therefore the liquids that are in it, or shebebeis tzivi asoi, or the liquids that are in that finger hold location, they remain tohoiden, as we explained. Again, the Rambam, when he writes halacha vav, it cannot impart tuma to oichlin, and for kodesh both in and out. But for mashkin, only the out and not the in. And v'shoisabah, you can actually use the keli to drink. Imagine, even for truma. We're not afraid that when you're drinking, could be some of the water in the keli will go into your mouth. Then it's going to go into your lower lip. Then your lower lip is going to touch the outer part of the keli. Then it's going to become tummy. Then it's going to touch, the whole thing will become a balagan. We're not chayish for that. That leniency is only the truma. Automatically, as we said, nitmukulan, lamashkin, loichlin, everything. Okay. So we already learned that really in Pedig Zayin, another opportunity to clarify Pedig Zayin, that when we learned it inside, at least I got stuck, I got it, Baruch Hashem, we got clarity. Halacha Gimel is moving on to the third stringency. Says that Rambam hanoise as a midrash. Right? We learned that if you carry a midrash, if you remember, not then the din is mutar lisay imay truma ke'echa. This is amazing. Guys, like this. We said that even though noise, even midras, it imparts tuma to the person that's carrying. It imparts tuma Yisrael to anything that I'm touching directly. That we learned. But what happens if, just for example, I have, let's say, a board on my back. On one side of the board, I have that which someone azov sat on, of a little handkerchief. That means I become tummy because I'm carrying it, even though I don't have contact. On the other side of the board, the key is that there's something else that I am carrying that I am not touching, nor is that item touching the kerchief, just that would be my example, but they're both being carried by the same person. So the rule is I'm allowed to do that. And now, guys, don't forget, anything we learned, even by midras, when I'm carrying midras, anything that I am touching, I will make tummy. I know that, but I'm not touching it. So I cannot be metameit. Why would you even think that there's a problem? Because you're kidding. I'm carrying midras and truma. Maybe the midras will touch the truma. Maybe the thing will get imbalanced and I'm going to chop it. I will touch it. We didn't make that gezerah. It's the hayra. But they made a chumrah that even if they don't touch, don't do it because it might touch. Even if it didn't touch, if I carried something that's imparting to masmidras, and at the same time I am carrying kodesh, that kodesh becomes tummy. And you know why? Ma'isa shahaya be'echad shenasa chavi shel kodesh, and the tima ba midrash shenasa imay. That midras, which could be like I'm saying just a kerchief, ended up touching it. So ma'isa shah gazru shanoisa sa midras lo yisasa kodesh. Now v'lo gazru ela ba midrash ma kodesh, because k'ma'isa shahaya, like we had, like by the sandal hamasuma, by Kamaisa Shahaya. And they didn't say don't carry truma, even though you're not allowed to make truma tamei. Now the imam of Vinasam, however, another clarity, if you violated this takana and you did carry hoyel if the fact that it didn't touch, so it's a limited maila, but still they told you don't do it. And by truma, they never even told you not to do it. Halacha Dalid, moving on now to the fourth, Ma'alo Yisera, La Kodesh, even over Truma. Big day Oichle Truma, the clothing of people that eat Truma. Afal Pisha Hain Tohiden. even if they are tohoiden, meaning that the person is careful not to become tamei. Since the kavana, you didn't have hesach hadas, you were guarding it, but you were only guarding it to be allowed to eat truma. Then we say your clothing are considered midras, the worst tuma, la kodesh, which means that your clothing will be matama adam and kalim. Midras means that it becomes an av. We already mentioned, I forgot the name of a kohen that was a yidat tzaddik, that even though that he was so careful never to become tamei, even the Mishnah says his name. Right, Danny, what was his name? I forgot the name of the kohen. Even his turban was a midras like kodesh. Halacha 5, Chumrah 5. Kli shehu mefutzal. Mefutzal, guys, we have this in Hilchos Shabbos by Muktzah, right? A keli that's made out of many components. It's an assemblable, not a good English word. I'm happy Danny's drinking coffee. You cannot correct me now. The kid said it's made out of many shtikalach. Assembled. And like, have a bed. Your bed is assembled. How is it assembled? Some parts fit into the other. Some parts are tied with ropes to each other. I don't care how they are assembled. For example, a bed. If it becomes tamei, something that we'll have to get used to when Mashiach is coming, guys, which is now, at least we go to the mikveh. Or theoretically, we should be going to the mikveh. Everyone goes to the mikveh every Yom Kippur. Now, what happens if my kelim becomes tamei? We took kelim to the mikveh. So when we're building the Eden mikveh project, maybe we have to build like a much bigger mikveh because you got to take your beds to the mikveh. You don't have to disassemble it. That's the point. But when it comes to Kodesh, we're not allowed to do such a thing. You have to untie it. And then you have to wipe down each part. Why? Because maybe in between there's something that is affecting a chatzitza. And only then can you table it, right? And then you reconnect them. And that's a chumrah.
Is that like a knife with a handle?
A knife and a handle. I think since the way our knives are made, they are put together with a nail. I don't think you're saying you have to disassemble it for kodesh. I'm speaking about a bed is a great example because as we learned so many mishnayos, and there was a post, then they had ropes. They would take it apart much more often than we do, much more often. Then they would have whatever they would put on top. Trying to think of a modern day mashal of keli that's assembled. My machine that records these classes, that's a great mashal. You take it apart, you put it together the whole time. All right. You can't see it because how can you film it if it's doing the filming? If you are finishing to make a keli, the fabricanti is a Talmud Chacham. He's very careful when it comes to Tumantara. The moment it's ready, right away you have to take it to the mikveh. Big chumrah. The ain't tzrichim head of shemesh. However, you don't have to wait until it gets dark. As a chumrah, what are you talking about? If the person that's making the guys a keli prior to it being ready is not even susceptible to becoming tamei. But now you gave the makabah patish. If you know that you're tar, if you know that all of the things that you are using to make that keli are tohayim, then even for truma, you don't have to mishtamash behem. Now, what's the logic even to be machmer la kodesh? That maybe there's a spittle of am haaretz that touched it while you were doing malacha. Now, guys, while the keli is being made, no one is concerned if someone tamei touches it, because you can't impart tuma. It's not a keli yet. In other words, that maybe he spat on it and the spittle is still moist. And now that the keli is finished, maybe some of that moist spittle is on it. That's the chashash. Now, just like we mentioned in the intro, just to be aware that all of these 6 that we learned until now, for one area they will be put in one category, and now we're moving on to the latter 5, the last 5 of the 11, and we are up to halacha Zayin, as you will see. Even though until now it worked perfectly, it was like 1 milah per halacha. Now the 7th milah begins in halacha Zayin. It's going to go all the way through va'ad b'chlal halacha Yud. So let's go. Achar shenigmar hakli. After a keli is considered ready, so the din is mitzadef masha b'teichel hakodesh. Everything in it is considered one thing as far as kodesh is concerned of an atra truma. What does that Rambam mean? He explains himself clearly. Ketzad kli shumali peiros. if a keli was filled with peiros perudim, zemizeh, like apples, they're separate entities. Oh, I'm sorry. The Rambam gives examples. I take it back. Tzemukim, raisins, gerois, dried figs, and a source of tumah. Everything is totally on the same level. But that's not the case by truma. In other words, by truma, you know what you say? Let's say if I'm an av and I touch the apple. Okay, so the apple is a rishon. We learned that midrabanan oichel can be metama oichel. Okay, so all of the apples around it become a sheni. If there's truma, all the apples it becomes a shlishi, and that's the end of the line. By kodesh, if I touch one apple, making the apple a rishon, all of the apples are a rishon. It's considered one gush. The keli combines them. The Rambam wants to stop over here and he makes this point. However, even though it's shel divrei this halacha 7 has a hint in the Torah. Hashgacha pratis, guys, we are celebrating Chanukah, Tavshin Pei Gimel, right? Hayom the 7th day, first day of Rosh Chodesh Teves. So what do we read? How when every of the Shvatim where we're leading the Chanukah Samizbeach, Kaf Achas, Asarozov Melek Toires. So Amra Chachamim, Kaf Achas, why Achas? Kaf is in already one, it's singular. Kol Mashu Kaf, everything that's in the Kaf is one. And more than that, even if it doesn't have a receptacle, if it's a flat board, still Mitzadaf Masha Olav like Kodesh. For example, foods were piled on a flat board, on top of leather. That's they're not even touching, and everything in the keli is considered one. It's like 10 Jews are in a shul, as long as you're following the halachas, have to be in the same area. Halachically, we become one. We become one sibur. Halachiches. Hoyom takakadusha. Beautiful, it fits. Now, nuances in this takon. If you have two tziburim, two piles that are inside a keli, and there's something in between them, and only one side has contact with tuma. The nitma echad mishneim. So he says like this: if the item that's in between the two piles needs to have a keli, meaning that the example that we give is levaina, all right? Levaina is something that if you don't put it in a keli, it's gonna it's like liquidy, even though there's granules, but it's something, so it has to be it needs the keli, like in contrast to meat. Meat is whether it's in a keli or not on a keli. So then we say, since it needs to have the keli, so therefore it's more connected to the keli combines it. Even though the source of tuma touched the pile to the right, it doesn't matter. The levaina, everything is one. Let's use the example of meat. If there is nothing else, everything is one. If there's some foreign thing over here, then we say that depends if it needs the kli or not. It's shaykh, even like kodesh, it's going to make a separation. L'mal yusa. Halacha 9. Another nuance, another detail of this 7th stringency. If you have two of these piles in one keli, and all right, and then one of these piles are connected somehow to moisture that's on the other side of the keli, and the nagu tame b'tzibur hasheni, the source of tuma touched the other pile. Now, guys, I want to add something important. Surely, the other pile is not connected with pile number 1. Pile number 2 is also not connected to the water on the other side. The point here is everything in the keli is one. What about the water on the other side? So here we say nitmu shnei shnei b'tzeder fakli. We apply Zion. We apply Chumrah 7. Everything in the keli is one gush. So therefore, both piles are tamei. And now let's go back. Let's quickly chazer the sensitivity of water. Look what's going to happen right now. I don't even care on what level of tumah. Water always goes back to be a rishon. Then the water is touching the achoyre hakeli. The achoyre hakeli for kodesh, metama outside, metama inside. It's metama to mashkin, metama to eichlin. Even though that it's outside the keli. So this chumrah goes even because that the water is connected to the pile number 1. Now another nuance. What happens if nagat tami b'mayim shachayda keli? Nitma ha'eichel v'amechuber lahem. So yeah, pile number one will become tummy. Here, there's a question. In other words, maybe the stringency of halacha zayin is only if the source of tuma goes in the keli. But if the source of tuma only stays outside, so that which is physically connected becomes tummy. A doubt whether it passes on. Another, we're still in the seventh chumrah, halacha yud, the final halacha regarding the seventh chumrah. And it's already tummy, and now you put it in a keli. And in the keli, you have oichel kodesh achar tahar. There's other food that so far was started, and they're not touching one or the other. Here we don't apply the chumrah of halacha number 7. The Torah remains starred. In other words, kli mitzaref, that's the lashon of this chumrah, is only when both were in the keli when they had contact with tuma. Here, the contact of tuma happened prior to you putting it into the keli. Now, tummy, of course, with tuma. So another thing, but yoim the nagaba oichel tamei. Now, a tful yoim, right, is not matama other foods. He's not matama even meiser sheni, but he touched the nagaba oichel. He touched that which is already tamei. So I'm asking you, did he add any tuma? No, it's tamei anyways. So again, yesh v'davar zeh sofik im nifsal atoyr machmas magrat tful yoim, because of this chumrah and halacha zayin, it's called tzedut kli, or maybe not. Why not? Because he didn't add any tumah. That was saba, that was already satiated with tumah. Guys, I know there's a background white noise. Zelik, if you hear it, I can move a machine closer to me. Maybe halavai, you don't even hear it. All right.
There's no noise on this end. It's all good.
Okay, Baruch Hashem, great. All right, halacha yud aleph. Now we're moving on to the 8th chumrah. It says that Rambam, we learned this already. Haravi b'kodesh pasul, but by truma, the end of the line of truma is only ashlishi. The chein ashlishi sheba truma im naga b'mashke kodesh harei zenitma k'meshu b'yarna. B'hashlishi sheba truma oy b'kodesh im naga b'mashke truma loy pesale, because it doesn't go further than shlishi. Halacha Yud Beis is moving on to the 9th milo, the 9th chumrah. Guys, again, we already learned this. If only one of your hands becomes tamei, and your hand touches your other hand, or your hand that's tamei on a level of a shady touches your fellow's hand, guys, pasal esashniya. I want to make it clear. The word pasal means the other hand becomes a shlishi, as the Rambam explains. Which means the same concept. So my other hand cannot be matama truma anymore. Truma doesn't go further than shlishi. Yeah, I'll be matama kodesh. And that's why we learned that one hand is matama the other hand for kodesh. Now you get it. If your hand was moist with mashke, even if the hand that contracted impurity, right, did not touch the other hand, if there's moisture there, then nitmeis chaverta. And we do consider both hands tamei, and you have to be toivel. Another detail, we also learned this, that even for truma, all you need is netilas yodayim. However, when it comes to kodesh, even when only your hands are tamei, it's only the rabbanan. So you only have to resolve your hands, but you have to take your hands to the mikvah. And then you say, Asher kedeshanu b'mitzvah sivitzivanu al tfilas yodayim. Right? And only then can you touch kodesh. Abel betruma doesn't work that way. And ba'afilu, another detail, ba'afilu nagaba kishehi neguva. Even if your hand was dry, even if your hand was dry, if your hand, I'll tell you why the Rambam is saying dry, because if your hand is not dry, then we already learned that this rabbinic law, that mashkin, that touch, even a sheni, remember that? It goes back to a rishon, that's going to apply here as well. And again, to remember that if the source of tumah did not begin with an av, I get it that those mashkin will not be able to be matama kelim. That yeah, but it can be matama oichel or mashkin, and it can be matama even chulin. That's why the Rambam has to write that it has to be in the guva. Beautiful. Halacha Yud Gimel is moving on to the 10th Maila, the 10th Chumrah. Oichlin the guvim, if you have dry foods that never became susceptible to tumah because they never had contact, b'rotzin ba'alim, with the 7 halachic liquids, then you can eat it even when your hands are tummy. Your hands are a sheni. So what? So what? You can't impart tumah to foods if they were not first muksha. So guys, remember that it's the reason why a kohen has to wash his hands for truma, and then subsequently we wash our hands for a meal. It's all because of if that is wet or that was wet. That's when you'll impart truma. But if it's dry, you're good. There's a rule called chibas hakodesh machsharton. No food of kodesh needs to be mukhshar. They are already all mukhshar. And therefore, even shalei ukhshar. And even if you're not touching it directly, in other words, you put kodesh food in a kodesh, you had a shish kebab stick, you had a sushi stick, and then they used to use the bigger needles, stick it into the food. I'm not even touching it. Or if someone else is going to put it into my mouth, still, I'm not allowed to eat kodesh if I did not previously resolve the tumah on my hands. Also, this word of chibas hakodesh machsharton shenitmu, because of chibas hakodesh machsharton. Indeed, that chibas hakodesh machsharton is only another nuance. The food that touched will become tamei, and you won't be allowed to eat it. But to start counting, here we have a doubt. Let's say you have oichel sheni, tummy. Now, what will be the din? I'll tell you what the din would be. If this oichel sheni touches truma, it won't make the truma tummy unless that food was muksha. But by kodesh, it makes a tummy. Question is, does it make a tummy on a level of shlishi, which means that this kodesh can still be matama another kodesh, or is it only tummy on a level of a revi? That's the question. One second. Whether we do this twice, I'm sorry. No, I said good. So this Hadei Hasheni Safek Pnei Shaharishain Loi Hukshar. 1 second number time of Nachamo. Yeah, I said good. In other words, do we say that it becomes a shlishi, and if it becomes a bona fide shlishi, then if this touches another kodesh, it's going to make that revi, or do we say this becomes tamei, but it's already the end of the line? As well is the final, the 11th chumrah. After the time of Aninus ends, the Rambam we already went a few times together. The Rambam Aninus midoraisa is only on the day of the passing till the burial. In the Rabbanan, it goes into the night. If the burial was not on the day of the passing, then even midoraisa, there's no Aninus after the day of the passing. But then Aninus midrabanan will continue until the end of the day of the burial. So now, once the time of Aninus ended, or Emechusi Kippurim after this kaparam, the chumrah is that if you want to eat kodesh, you gotta go to the mikvah again. Since they are allowed to eat truma, right? Therefore, why even rabbinically will you demand of them to go to the mikvah? Now, and therefore there was a certain amount of hesach hadas because they can't eat it, so they didn't have in mind to guard their hands l'kodesh. And the shemen itnu v'lo yadu. However, says that Rambam limiting this 12, this 11th. They may not eat prior to going to the mikvah. Abel and Agia, yes, if Rambam is making a contrast, he'll make it possible because he, indeed, who cannot eat kachim, that's midoiraisa, he will passel it. Here, this mila is only for eating and not for touching. So Atkan, we went through all of the 11 milas, and the final halach in this chapter, halach Zayin, like we mentioned in the intro, that I was going to tell you that we don't pull all of the 11 in the same boat. No, 6 and 5. Sheish milas noise until halach Zayin here. Asom bein lakodesh, even lechulin, that people took upon themselves the stringency to make believe it's kodesh and to eat it al taras kodesh. They are all the same. However, the Rambam wants to clarify from which one. What's the final 5? Which is what we learned in Halacha Zayin. Here, these stringencies are only for kodesh proper. For that, they are like chulin. Lefika chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh hadisha intame bahem v'asheni pasel and v'hashlishi tohoin like chulin k'may shebiyarnu gevaldik. Moving on to today's second chapter, Perikut Gimel of Ilchay Sha'ar Aves Atumais. Perikut Gimel, all numbers, is going to speak firstly about Chamesh Mailos Asu Chachamim Bibegadim, as we'll explain. We're going to learn many stringencies that the Chachamim made regarding the tefillah itself. We're going to learn the leniency, the chazaka, that all kalim are to hide them during Yom Tov meaning Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. And finally, what's going to be Gavaldig is we're going to learn some cases of Safek for which one still has to burn Truma and Kachim. Normally, the klal will be that for a Sfeikos, you're not allowed to burn it. Can't eat it, it's called Toilen. But sometimes, just like we learned that there are certain tumas midrabanan for which you're cited. In this chapter, we're going to learn there's certain sfeikas that we're so machmer that it's mamish tame, you burn truma and kachim. Perek shloisha asa, that's 13 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Some discrimination. Some people here have coffee, some people never have seltzer. All right, halacha aleph. Chamesh Mailois Asu Chachamim Babegodim. Now, guys, it's very easy. Unlike in the previous chapter, every one of the 11 was different. It's all the same. And that is, Big Day Haaretz automatically are considered midras, friends, and a midras. People took upon themselves to eat chulin betara. Now, like this, really, eating chulin betara. People ate truma, chulin al taras truma, more chamur, because don't forget, tara means I don't want it to be a sheni, but it's not shaykh to be a shlishi. Some people even did more. They ate their chulin as if it's truma, which means it can even become a shlishi. Then the very few ate their chulin al taras koich. That's the biggest chulin. So people that eat the chulin betara, any garment, any midras, which was his garments and all other kalim, the chairs, the beds, the mattresses, the pillows, the blankets, have a din of av. Are automatically always considered like a zavim. Number 2, for people, big day on the standard, not so. Before we learn big amiyaretz, what about the begadim of such people? They are considered midras for someone who's eating meiser sheni. I'll give you a big difference. That, guys, what we're learning now, just for you remember, that's mamish the Mishnah, the 3rd chapter of Chagiga. They are called Perushim. Einam kizavim afilu truma. Hareza haparush tor afilim nagaba big gufai. But hold on, but the begadim of the oichle tunam betara is considered a midras for the food of meiser sheni. Now, next level, big day oichle meiser sheni still is a midras lo oichle truma. Step number 4, big day oichle truma, like we mentioned, it can be the biggest tzaddik, it can be the kohen gadol. But if all he had in mind was, I'm making sure I'm not doing it avoid in the base, I'm just making sure that my truma is tahar, and I'm gonna midras like kodesh. But again, that's only the begadim. Only the begadim. But the oichle truman atzmam, they're not zav. And number 5, big day oichle kodesh, imagine, are still considered midras for anyone involved in the making of the mechatos. Like we learned in the Chas Paraduma. Abel here again, it's only a gzeira on the begadim, the tar lakoidish is matters of lachatos. Halacha base. Chenos chacham mailos betfilam. Guys, when you go to the mikvah, do you need kavanah? The answer is depends for what. For the type of mikvah that we are going nowadays, you don't need kavanah. For a person not knowingly was thrown into a mikvah, person who happened to be swimming and he went to swim, but there's no chatzitza, it will work. That's only l'chulim. Now, if you want to do something that is more sensitive to tumah, you have to have kavanah for that. So let's read it inside. Kate said, "Mishu tava b'lei kavanah." He started l'chulin, but that person, even that person, may not eat ma'aser sheni, even though he knows, guys. After I went to that swim, I had no contact with nothing. I'm not allowed to eat ma'aser sheni. I got to go back under the water b'kavanah l'ma'aser. If I went to the mikveh for ma'aser sheni, I'm a cheskas to have l'ma'aser, but I'm not allowed to eat truma. If I went to the mikveh lo truma, yes, truma, but I can't eat kachim. The same 5 steps as we know Khalid. Now because what about Taval Stam? Not I had kavanah to go to the mikveh, but I didn't have in mind for what? My friends, I'm sorry, you're only Torah Lachol Muvad, and you are just as tamei as you were, even Lamaisa. And by the way, that's not only for the mikveh, even by Netilas Yodayim or Tivilas Yodayim, Tzarech Kavanah, Afilu Lamaisa. When Amaisa do Lamaila Tzarech Kavanah, Avalachulin again, Ein Tzarech Kavanah. So when you stand Washnegel Vasi, you can be completely absent-minded. It's Kavaldi. Chol Amailo Se'elu, everything we learn is only Midivrei Seifim, Aval Din Torah. Hoyel B'Tavim L'Komak Amareu Torah L'Koyel. Halacha Gimel. Misha Yatoyla Truma. And Visiach Es Liboy Milechel. Yeah, he was ready to eat Truma. And there was a moment that he stopped thinking about the fact that he's going to eat Truma. Automatically, his body, Nitma Behesach Hadas. And this person may not eat Truma. But here's a good thing. Normally, if I'm Tomei, my friends, what's the rule? Remember that if I go to the mikvah, for Ma'aser Sheni, I don't need to have Erev Shemesh. That's the parting. For Truma, I have to wait until the night. This concept that if I went to the mikvah, but Hesach Hadas, I got to go to the mikvah again. For that, you do not need to wait until night. And now again, even though this person is saying, I know that my hands did not become tamei, because of the Chalil rule that the hands are busy. If I no, not that I know that I became tamei. I just wasn't mindful. I got to keep away from tumas meis. So then I need not only to go to the mikvah, I have to undergo the whole procedure. I need the hazov, the 3rd day and of the 7th day of Pesach Hadas. If I know mace, I was mindful. Only from shar to mice, it works. Partial kavanah. So then I don't have to undergo the steps for mace, but yes, tzarech tefillah and the head of shemesh, after truma. Now comes the kasha. What did we learn before? Before we learned that you don't even have to wait head of shemesh, right, Danny? Why over here do you have to have head of shemesh? Because before you only had hesech hadas from eating truma, but you knew for sure that you did not become tamei. That's why the Rambam wrote above, all you need is mikvah, you don't need head of shemesh. Aber this guy, other than tumas meis, he was not guarding his body from any tumah. That's why it's worse. That's why mikvah and wait until the night. And the davar baruch that all of these mikvahs are only midrabanan. Halacha dalet. That you find kelim bashvakim or barachayvos, even in the deserts, which means that there are much less people there. So you can argue, come on, no one touched it there. On that level. The chayin harukin, all spittle that you find over there, becheskas tuma, maybe a zav spit there. The chayotzebay, remember zav chavedav, zav nidal yoldis, who haray kazeh halach hey. What did we say in Allah Dalid? Midrabanan, you find the Keli Bumba, it's coming on the highest level, that's only outside Yerushalayim and HaKodesh. However, furthermore, guys, we had some Gemaras on this, these dinim. So if you have these paths that take you to the tefillah, so you would argue, come on, my friends, if you found it on the path going to the mikvah, it probably fell out of the bag of the guy who was taking it to the mikvah. No, it's not tummy. With the exception of sakinim that are being used to shachkachim, that's because of chumras hakachim. If I can just point out, I want to make a little kasha. Why did the Rambam write in Perek Yud Beis that I have 11 stringencies? Why isn't this another stringency? I think the answer is because the Rambam in Perek Yud Beis was differentiating between kodesh and truma. There's no such a thing as an animal that's truma, doesn't exist. Well, it's even these sakinim, there isn't a sakin to shach truma, so it's not shaykh to make a difference between kodesh and truma. Maybe, probably. All right, hopefully. The knives are tamei, only the sakin on the 14th day of Nisan, there the halacha is shoichet ba'akach miyad, even if it falls on Shabbos. Why? Because of a klal that cheskas all of the kelim on Yom Tov and on Erev Pesach are tohidim. Halacha b'av motzas hakamiyim shloisha asar. So what do we say? What did we say before? Guys, we began in Halacha Daled that maybe it had contact with the mace, which means maybe you have to, not maybe, you have to, midrabanan, you have to have it undergo all of the 7 days and the sprinkling on the third, the sprinkling on the seventh. If you find the knife on the 13th, if you would find it on the 14th, you're good. All we say is maybe today's the 7th day. So there's going to be still more, it's going to be more lenient. Maza olav, Ke'ilu, it's the 7th, which is the second Hazah of the 7th day. Take it to the mikvah and you can use it tomorrow. We say the worst case mace, and we don't say that maybe today it became time, maybe too much mace. Allah is like, what's the second shul is going to do at slime? You find 2 kelim, they're bound for 2. Kelim number 2 is also good. Maybe yomta, maybe shara yomim. How do you come away? Because no one would try 2 kelim when you know one is good if you would not have known the other one is good as well. Im tahira tahira, or the other way, im tameya tameya. Allah has all of the spittle that you find in Yerushalayim be'emsa derech. So in Yerushalayim on kelim, there's a lot more leniencies. In Yerushalayim, right? I added a yomtiv. Hold on, spittle no. So the spittle that you find in the middle of the road goes aleim tuma, like spittle that's found in any other place. Here's the leniency that all of the spittle that's found on the sides of the roads, because the way of the world was and will be that during the rest of the year, only the people that were very careful never to become tummy, they walked all the way on the sides of the road, not to bump into anyone. And the oilam would walk in the middle of the road. So in middle, the presumption is they were zavim, the chayotzebay, and on the side Tahidin, because the Perushim walked on the sides. But during Yom Tiv, all of the spittle that's found in the middle of the road is Tahidin. Shekol Yisrael Tahidin Beregel, and only the spittle that's found Shabbat Stadim Tameim, because Shatameim Beregel Mu'atim, and they were the ones that were partial with Sidei Hadirachim. Beautiful. Allah 9, Kishain Shahadi Shanois Sheni, and Hasheni Yois Shlishi. Just in all of these rules apply. V'chein Safek Krishan Ois Safek Sheni. Safek Sheni Ois Safek Shlishi. And now let's take it further. Allah Yud. Trum of a Kachim, Shenitmu Bisfake Av. Mi Avais Hatuma Shal Toiram. So that's called a suffix, midoiraisam. Again, sometimes we say for a suffix you may not burn. You do. If it's coming from a suffix of doiraisa. Harelu nisrafim betumazu. For example, simple. And not only, however, but don't think every suffix, even if it's something not every time will you burn. Now you can't eat it. So the in between, it's what we call toilin. The ein oichlin oisam. The ein oichlin oisam machalon shenestapel lehem. Ella toilin toilin means leave it hanging. Like oichlin oisartim. Yesham sveikais. However, now the Rambam doesn't make a list of numbers. Just we should be aware of that. Sometimes you're seitiv, sometimes you're toila. What is across the board? Avol al sveik hatuma. If there's a double doubt, this example will be given, just an example in halacha yud gimel, don't worry. So then, never, ein sveifin al trumul oilam, and the ein sarach loimer, kachim, because burning kachim is worse, you understand, because the holier something is, how are you allowed to burn it? Ella toilin means, now, what will be an example of a sveik hatuma? So for that, the Rambam, instead of just giving an example, he gives you a klal. Al shisha sveikos. Oh, I'm sorry, he does give. The Rambam gives the number. For 6 doubts, you burn the truma. And all other sveikos, you don't burn the truma toilim. But the Rambam gives the sisha sveikos. He'll give one example where you're going to see the sveik. The kulam gezeida midivreya. And it's amazing that the Chachamim have the power to tell you, go burn truma. The Elohim. Beis HaPras. Think about it, guys. The whole Beis HaPras is maybe there was a bone on the size of etzem kisoidim. And maybe not. Right? That's in Bashra, it's a safek. You burn. If a coin went, if I walk through the Beis HaPras and I touch truma, you burn the truma. If the truma was muksha. I'll offer haba meretz amen.
No one follows that.
Yes, they do. We learned that about it. It's a, the whole thing is the Rabbana. It's a doubt. Offer about meretz amen, as we learned, because maybe there's a part of a mace that can impart to it. It's a suffix. Number 3, big ha'aretz. Maybe this ha'aretz is taught. Kalim hanatzoyim. What we just learned to this Pedic. It's when you have kalim hanatzoyim, and if that touched truma, you burn. Number 5, on the spittle that you find, as we learned in this chapter. Number 6, ba'almei raglei adam tamei, which that is tamei, any bodily fluid that first gathers in the body prior to it being expelled, which makes it similar to spittle, is tamei. Guys, tamei from a zav and av. But what happens if it got mixed? B'mei raglei behema. And the halacha is you follow majority. What happens if it's mechza? Or the key, it's bottle. If bottle marisa neilah, you don't know. That's a doubt. These are the 6 cases. Even though it's a suffix, you burn. Now, ketzad im nitmeis truma machmas echad mishisha elom. Afal pi sheikir tumasen is only besafei. Harezuti sore. Why? Hoil uvadai sfekus elu tumasen menatoira. Shameis fazov to menatoira. That's why the Chachamim they made a gzeira, it's a suffix, and burn it. Now. Or wasn't direct. Very simple, right? To have food that a person works through a Beis HaPras. So what are we saying, guys? We're saying that this guy, in this case, might be enough. He touched something else. That might be a rishon. Something else touched something else. Now you're touching truma. If it became tummy, it's only indirect. That's also your burn. Because that's the way it works by truma. It's susceptible even to a shlishi. But if, let's go back to what we said on halacha yud beis, fake hatuma. What happens in the stopping? I went through a place, someone told me, maybe that was a Beis HaPras. I'm not certain. So there's a doubt, even if I went through a Beis HaPras, the whole thing is a suffix. Maybe there was an etzem, maybe not. If I have a doubt whether I went through a Beis HaPras, that's called a sfeik. Because since the ikar tum is only a suffix, but maybe I touched, maybe I didn't. And now, my fellow Yidden, we are going to today's 3rd chapter. This is so gavaldig. Right, we're going to have now 12 sveikos that the Chachamim make pure. So it's a beautiful flow. So just like we concluded Perikut Gimel with the 6 sveikos that are so not good that you burn truma and kachim. Now we're going to learn 12 sveikas that the Chachamim says complete tahar, not toiling. You're completely tahar. And we're going to learn these. We're not going to have all of the 12 in this chapter. Just giving a heads up that we're going to have 4 of the 12 only in this chapter, and God willing, tomorrow, Perek Tezvav, we're going to learn all of the remainers. Let's go. So this is like the 2-chapter series, a mini series. Perek Arba Asar has 12 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Says the Rambam, Shnei Moses Feikois, Tiharu Chachamim, and here we go. Number 1, Sfeik Mayim. She'uvim Safek Mayim She'uvim La Mikvam. So guys, we learned yesterday over Shabbos about the Mayim She'uvim. The Rambam, don't forget, don't worry, Chaver. We're going to relearn every single one. See, in Perek Yud Beis today, the Rambam spoke about the Achad Eslimailas. The way he did it was, I think because there was less to explain, he didn't list 11 and then go back and explain each one. He right away explained each one. I mean, well, like we said, until Allah Zayin, one Allah was enough to explain. Here, it's a lot more elaborate. The Rambam is just going to list the 12, and he's going to chazer, he's going to go back. So let's read it. Safik Mayim Shuvim L'Mikvah, as will be explained. Number 2, Safik Tumat Saf Al Pnei Hamayim. That's very complex. We'll see. The Rambam really limits this. The example, just, if you have a sheretz that's floating underwater, and I went to the mikvah, and by the way, we learned clearly, right, that if I go to the mikvah and I touch a sheretz, while I'm going out of the mikvah, my whole mikvah was worth nothing. I don't know if I touched it or not. And we're going to be very lenient. Rambam only by a sheretz floating on water. Even if there was so little space that for me not to touch it, it was like a hairbreadth. If it's not shaykh for me to leave the mikvah without touching, that's not called a doubt. But we're going to allow, even if there's a high likelihood that you touched it, everyone will be explained. Number 3, Safek mashkin letame achedim. All right, we have a doubt whether mashkin imparted impurity. Now we also learned last week all that chumrah in the rabbanim that mashkin becomes a tchila, and then it's metama kalim. If you have a doubt whether it touched something else or not, we'll be lenient. But the mashkin themselves will be mashkin. It's really me a favor if you can ask whoever is cleaning up. Just tell them, be careful over here. That we need just 15 more minutes. 15 more minutes. We're recording. The number 4, that will be the final one of today, will be safek yodayim. Okay. In other words, whether my hands imparted tuma of this whole tumas yodayim, which to begin with is a very rabbinic tuma. And there we say not only whether there's a question whether my hands touch something else, bein l'tumas atzman, if there's a suffix regarding the hands, bein l'tama achedim, bein l'taharas yadayim mitumas, every subcategory of Daled of the 4th will be explained in this chapter. And now, from going farther, 5 until 12 will be explained. God willing, we'll learn this in the next chapter in Perek 15. Safek divrei seifrim. The rule is Safek Divrei Seifrim, we're going to be Metahirit. Number 6, if there's a suffix regarding Chulin. Number 7, if there's a suffix regarding Karbonois. Now, I want to make it clear. The Rambam does not mean a suffix regarding Kachim. No. The Rambam means that if a person was preparing ordinary food, as if, right, Al-Qadis, Kodesh, that is what the Rambam is referring to. That will be very lenient by the Sfekis. Number 8, a suffix regarding Soras blemishes. Number 9, a suffix that's called Oived v'Oimed, right? There's a doubt whether a person who had Soras walked or stood. We just learned this not that long ago. It's easy to remember that this chumrah of a mitzvah, that when they enter a home, everything in the house is tamei. If the mitzvah is under a tree and stationary, other things under those branches become tamei. But if he just walked through, he was not matame. What happens if you have a doubt? Number 10, a suffix regarding shiratzim, regarding the dead bodies of a sheretz, suffix reshus harabim, and the final one will be suffix shtei reshuyos. Now, all of these guys, every single one will be explained. So let's just go. Halacha Beis is going back to the first of these 12. That's called suffix mayim she'uvim lemikvah. Says the Rambam suffix mayim she'uvim lemikvah keitzad. Yeah, we learned yesterday on Shabbos shloy shaludam mayim she'uvim. that falls into a mikvah at the same time. Paslu. However, you have a doubt. Safek naflu, safek naflu. Or another type of doubt. Mayim she'uvim fell into the mikvah. I don't know whether it was 3 loig or maybe a little bit less. Afilu naflu, safek yesh b'mshir ein boy. Both of these types of doubts, we're not machmer, sfeik trod. And the mikvah remains kosher as it was before. However, the ein moidon loy likvah b'mikvah zev alasis talis lachatchila. But if a tolam asa, then tehoiros of tehoiros. That was easy. Halacha gimel. Moving on to the second of the 12, and that's called safek tumat safa alpani amayim ketzah. There's a doubt concerning tuma, and again, the Rambam limits this leniency. We're going to see many applications, but the simple is when there is something tame floating on the water, the Rambam holds that is regarding a sheretz dafka. Sheretz, a dead carcass of a sheretz, or enough of the sheretz, as we learned, that can be matama, whether it is an adasha, if you remember, or whether it was an aver, is even less than the adasha, whatever of the shmoyne shiratim can be matama, it's floating on the water. All right. In either event, the yarad lamayim, a person goes into these waters, and what? He knows for sure. The yarad lamayim, he went into the waters. Afilu ein sham elam loy adam v'tuma. Even if going out of the water, there's so little space that you can squeeze exactly the person and the tumah without touching by a hairbreadth. But there's such a possibility, no matter how little it is, it has to be possible. And guys, the word is that even though the guy that went to the mikvah was tamei, that means you're beginning with someone that's becheskas tamei, but he went to the mikvah. And when he went back out, that's when the Tara comes. Maybe he touched, maybe he didn't, you're lenient. However, now we're going to find other applications, but in this case, only for sheretz. Any time that the sheretz truly is not floating on the water, either it was suspended above the water, same idea. So it's suspended in something. When I left the mikvah, maybe I touched it, maybe not, but it was suspended. It was not underwater. Or if it was halachically considered, it was being dragged over the water. Can you imagine? It means it was on the water, but it was being dragged by someone. And while the guy, the chacham, was driving the sheretz, you came out of the mikvah. That's not floating. They're already, no, it's like munachim, and there are other rules by munachim. Now, what are the rules if the sheretz is stationary? Halacha dalet. Now we'll see. Sheretz is in a keli. It's not in water in a keli. The sheretz is in the keli. The keli is floating on the water. Chaps. Or the sheretz is on a shtickle carcass, or on a part of a mace, or on a carcass. The mace and the nevela are floating, and the word is that Rambam makes it clear in Gimel that this leniency of safek tumat safa, the sheretz has to be floating. Here, the carcass was floating. The sheretz was sitting on top of the carcass. I feel you can argue that if the nevela is nemayach, it's like watery. No. That the sheretz was on shichva zera, which is also has come in a level of enough. And the zera was floating on the water, but the sheretz was sitting on the zera. Now, what are the rules? It depends. If it happened b'reshus hayachid, that's a rule. Safek tumah b'reshus hayachid sfeikei tamei, as we will explain later. If it happened in the reshus harabim, it's not going to be taught. But it will depend on reshus hayachid and reshus harabim. Now, what happens if one sheretz was under the other sheretz? We view them at a ketuma of a matter. It's all floating. If it was on mechatos and the mechatos were floating on the water, here is a suffix. If it's kemunach and kemunach, and the Rambam therefore is lenient. By halacha, continuing and learning the number 2, the second of called suffix tuma saf al pnei hamayim. Kederech shetiharu suffix tuma saf pnei hamayim. Whether that wasn't a case keli, whether that was in a karka, kachti haru safek tahara, shatzaf al pnei hamayim. Now we're going to broaden it. Now we're not going to speak only about shadats. And then bekelim bein bekarkaos. What I mean, guys, my friends, is what happens really. The tuma was stationary. The tuma was nacha. We're gonna that which was pure was floating. And while it was floating, I don't know, maybe you touched the tuma, as the Rambam will explain. Ketza. A keli, he's giving a keli. That she tamei meis. The keli is tamei meis. You have a kicker of truma, you have a loaf of truma that's karuch besiv oy binayar, and it's inside this areva. Now, guys, why am I saying this? The mayim. Why do we normally learn, Danny? I'm just explaining why you needed to have the truma inside something, because if the areva is tamei meis, forget about the rabbinic tchila. What is the mayim? The mayim is a rishon, right? Biblically. If the mayim touches the truma, it becomes a sheni biblically. There's no doubt. No. The truma was in something that's not susceptible to truma. So I don't care that the mayim is tamei. The mayim is not touching the truma. It's inside this plastic wrapper. What's the issue? And as this thing filled up, nifshar haniyar, the kikar tzaf al pnei hamayim. Now, the Rambam has to make it clear. I put it in there when it was wrapped, but at some point the wrapper got undone, but it's still on the wrapper enough that it's mavdil bein hamayim. So the mayim did not impart tumah. What's the issue? The guy's floating around. Maybe the kicker came to the edge of the keli, and the edge of the keli touched that. Now we're not speaking about sheretz anymore. In other words, what is munach is the tumah. The tide is floating. Maybe you touched, maybe you didn't. The safak nagat tzidi b'arev is only naga. Here we also say how amazing is it? So if the tumah is floating, when do we have the luxury to be lenient? The Rambam writes explicitly by sheretz. But if we were flipping it, the tamei is munach, the tide is floating. Even if the tamei is not a sheretz, it's a tamei meis. We're good. We can be lenient. Halach above sheretz and him say saf al gab boir, and the boir is inside a gas. Inside a gas. No, you have a wine press. So we say, Sveikoi Tomei, Vila Poyalim, Sveikoi Tar, because Lepoyale means, guys, for people who are eating chulin, for people that are not eating truma. Mepnei shehi tumat safon. Mepnei shehi tumat safon. So what are we saying, my friends? That we do consider the wine tamei. In other words, we're machalek bein mayim liyayin. Wow. And now, okay, we're machmer. Halacha Zayin is moving on to the third of the 12. It's called Safek Mashkin, right? Safek Mashkin. So we say, Latama Acherim Mamishtar. But Latuma Satzman Tomei Ketzad. You're holding the staff. Listen to this case. You have the liquid that's tummy in the top of your staff. You threw it into pure kikarais. Now, what's the question? Did that water touch those kikarais? You have a doubt. In the topic, in Nagu Mashkin to name the even though Mashkin midrabanan will be metame kalim, at least the achoirav, like we learned, to be metame other Mashkin. In the topic im nagu Mashkin elo to name Mashkin acherim on the nagu. You have Mashkin to name. Did it touch other liquids or not? Mashkin acherim tohirim. That's the meaning of Safek Mashkin latame acherim tahar. But now let's limit this leniency. Abel tamei. The Tomei extended his hand or his ragloi. Labein mashkin tohoiden, right? Did you touch that water or not? Or you threw a kicker Tomei lebein mashkin tohidin. The doubt is whether those mashkins acquired tuma. Now it's different. Safik naga haritmeim besafik chen chol chayotze bozeh halacha ches chavius that's filled with mashkin upashat atoma yadi la avira. I want to add something that we never spoke out until now. I'll explain to how things work. We spoke about a klei cheres. A klei cheres is metama tuma, is mekabel tuma when you put something in it, even without touch. But let me ask you a question. Let's say I'm a tamei mace, and I put my hands inside a earthenware, a klei cheres utensil. Don't touch the utensil. I'm a tama the utensil. I want to know something. If there's food in the utensil, what level of tuma is that food? Let me tell you what it's not. It's not that since, even though I didn't touch the utensil, and the Torah says I did have contact with the utensil, we don't say it's as if I had contact with the food. We don't say that. I'm an av. I put my hand in the kli cheres, the keli becomes a rishon. If there's food in the keli, the food becomes a sheni, but not a rishon. It's even though my hand imparts tuma even without contact, but we don't say it's as if my hand touched everything there. The keli becomes contacted by my hands. If there's something else in the keli, then it goes down a notch. Now, if there's liquids, if I said liquids, I take it back because liquids always become a rish, but foods will only be a shame. So chavetz filled with mashkin. The mashkin are tamein. So first, mashkin are tamein b'chavis tohira. She'ein safek hamashkin b'tamei. So this barrel, I take back my barrel. Okay, this is not about someone that could impart tuma to a keli. Not in the case of an am. If there's a suffix whether I touch liquids or not. So the Rambam wrote in Halacha Zayin, the liquids become tamei. That's a great example. And normally, in the moment liquids are tamei, they impart tuma. They cannot impart tuma. They didn't touch the chavias. They didn't touch the liquids that are in the chavias. The chavias remains to hide. Like we said, that's the leniency. Safek mashkin l'tamei achedim taught. But the mashkin should also to hide. Because since, like we said, they don't get direct contact with the mashkin. If the chavias is tahor, how can it be the time of the mashkin?
How is it pure? You said the airspace makes it.
So here we're speaking about that the tuma that entered is not tamei enough, not the case of tumei mace. I give a bad example. Something that's only tamei in a level of a sheni.
So that won't.
Airspace
won't affect the jug.
Correct.
Okay.
In other words, whenever there's a taroivis, guys, suffix, it makes a tummy misafek. So those mashkins remain tummy because they're mixed with something that the whole thing is a suffix. But then the barrel won't be tummy. That's the rule. That even, in other words, whenever you have a suffix, whether mashkin or tameim, if the question is whether it can impart tuma to something else, it cannot. Halacha 9. Can mashkin impart tuma to kalim? Yes, but if it's a suffix, no, it can't. Hamarbitz based on the mind tameim, it was very common that people would have earthen floors and they would want the dust to settle and they would use wine, the wealthier people, or water to sprinkle it to be marbitz to make everything nice. So if a person used mayim tameim, right, whether you did merabitz, whether you poured it, or whether you were zalaf and the sprinkling it, and you had taharis in the house, and you have a question, that's the chiddush, that's the whole third rule. That suffix mashkin, in our case, the mashkin were vadai, but you don't know whether it touched something else. Zolaf mashkin tohayden, if you were sprinkling the mayim tohayden utameim together. The teichabai is you're always going to be lenient. It's not, you can argue, see whether the thing is wet. Here, even if it looks wet, so what? Maybe it got the mayim tohayden. The name so achakach mashkin al gabi kikar shel truma. You find the water. Now here you'll find one of the few cases where it's better to ask it of ASAP and you took the water while it was there, and you asked the Shaila, so the Rav sees the kicker with the water. What's his question? Did that water come mashkin toheidim or tameim? He's going to say toheida. Why? Based on Klal 3 that we're learning today, which is safek hamashkin letamei tor. But if the guy didn't ask it off right away, first he waited, and what happened is that the water now is dry. So who cares? We care. It's amazing. If the source of tumah is not there, so now we say, there's a suffix, whether something acquired tumah b'reshus hayachid. Shesafik tumah b'reshus hayachid, tani k'may she'izbar. You know it came from mashkin, but the mashkin are not here right now. Harei ein kan mashkin. All the Rav is saying, elakikar she'izafik tumah. Listen to the logic. If I bring the bread when it's wet to the Rav, what is he asking? What is he judging? Not the bread. The question is this liquid from the mashkin to Haydin, or is it from the mashkin to Maim? So the suffix is on the mashkin. So the Rav is going to say, since I have a suffix regarding the mashkin, suffix mashkin to impart tuma to Hayd. The moment there's no liquid, what is the shaila? Not on the water. It was on the bread. You have a shaila. So the rule is, if that happened, b'reshus hayachid, as we'll define later, you'll be tamei. Halacha yudal. Safek Yodayim. This is today's fourth and final suffix that's tahar. Mainly he's tamei. Whether it itself is tamei, you have a doubt. Whether the question is whether it imparted tumah. Bein letaharasan. In all types of suffix tahar. Keita, for example, your hands are pure. 2 hands, both of them are pure. And that are tameim. Guys, what level of tumah? Surely, let's say Rishon, okay? Now, Safek, I'm saying Rishon, why is that? Because we have a klal. What's the klal? Guys, Oicholim can only be Rishon. Remember these rules. Oicholim can only be Rishon. Mashkin of Azov can be enough. So I'm saying you have two more breads. 2 hands. Why do we need to have 2 hands and 2 breads? Because you're going to see soon, many cases soon. You're going to have a case where you'll have 2 breads, 1 toy, 1 tummy, 2 hands, 1 toy, 1 tummy. But here, the hands are toy, the breads are tummy. Something not. I don't know if I touched it or not. Another case of doubt. Both of the hands are tummy. And in front of you, you have 2 key kadim that are prior to the doubt to hoidim. Safik naga, safik leinaga. Another case of that. 1 hand is started, 1 hand is tummy. Now, guys, yes, we learned that for kachim, both hands will be tummy. We're not speaking about kach. 1 hand is tummy. What we learned is in the tilos yadayim on 1 hand. Both of them are tahar. Now, safak naga be'echad mehem. You touched 1 of them. Question is, which hand safek batuma naga safek b'tohida? See, every case there's a possibility that it starts. Another case, both of the hands are tohidas. In front of you have 2 loaves of bread. One was already tamei. 1 is tohida, 1 is tamei. Now, guys, both of your hands are tohidas, right? If I touch the tamei bread, that hand became tummy. Maybe I touched the toilet bread. Nothing bechem. Safik b'tamanaga, safik b'tornog. Another case of that. Show you the achas tohira, and the other hand is tameyo. You began that way. In front of you, you have a bread that's already tummy. The other bread is tahar, and I touched both. But maybe the tummy touched the tummy. Nothing worse happened. And the toilet touched the toilet. In every case, there's a possibility. There is one scenario where either the hands remain tired or the breads remain tired. The naga b'shteyam, but maybe in the good way. Safik tmei batame, nothing was ruined. And the tohida touched the tohida, but maybe not. Or maybe the tmei batame. So we say in all of these cases, Lakula, Hayadam Kmashayu, and the Kikarim, Kamaishahayu, Vchain, Your hands were tummy. Tilas yodayim. Aber safek shamayim shetohar. Maybe the waters were good. Safek shapsulim. Or by netilas yodayim, natla. Natla means a reviz. Safek you started with the shear. Safek Abraham. Or safek shoyadavar choytzal yodai safek lahayim. All of these cases, yadav tohayis. That's the fourth rule. Safek yodayim are tahad, period. And final halacha today, halacha yud beis, hois yoda achas temeyom. The ain't no yudega. You don't know which one of these two hands. You tell the yid, don't make taharas until you wash both. But the im naga ba'achas mehem ba'taharais koydem shitl yadav post facto. Again, maybe the one that will start touching taharas were lenient and taharaisai. Gevaldik, and the other we mentioned, so we learned 4, so it's tomorrow.